Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Car. The plan was to start a subwoofer enclosure. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So the new plan was to fix the CRV, drive the CRV while I fix what I thought was a power steering fluid leak, but turned out to be a massive transmission fluid leak that is continually getting worse by the day. When I ended my last video, I had two vehicles, both waiting for parts, both leaking numerous fluids all over the place. I don't know. I'd rather just build a sub enclosure. So guys, I did a lot of off-camera work on this Honda. I ended up replacing the valve cover, and you can see it's real nice and clean. Everything is sealing very well. Not a bad job. You got some wiring on the backside. You've got this cover to come off, which is just for 10 millimeters. You got 4 plugs, 4 coil packs, and a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 10 millimeters. A couple hoses and a bracket on this side, and realistically, the whole thing just comes off. Keep it clean. I like to use like a 1 inch by 1 inch square of the little red Scotch-Brites, and go over the head, go over the inside of the valve cover. Clean it real good with some brake clean, and then reassemble everything, torque it down, and you are good to go. As you can see right here, I've got my new heat tube installed, and that heat tube kind of goes under here, under the plenum, down that way to the thermostat and the thermostat housing, and it wires off to the radiator down here. I found a Dorman piece on the old Amazon, and it was considerably cheaper than the old Honda piece, or the original Honda piece. And you know what? It fit very well. This is an underneath view of the heat tube and the thermostat and thermostat housing. If you guys look up, you can see the heat tube kind of running along the back underside of the plenum, and it goes around to the radiator and the heater core. So I also had to spend some time at the Summit Pick and Pull, and part of the reason that had to happen is because of these guys. These are Honda-specific bolts, the bolt the thermostat housing in and the thermostat to the housing. I couldn't reuse the original ones that I pulled off the car, and Honda wanted like $11 for these bolts, and nobody had them in stock, and it would have taken days to get. So to the junkyard I went to get bolts. I ended up staying late one night, putting this thing all back together with the heat tube, the thermostat housing, and the thermostat, filled it up with coolant, and left it for the next morning. Next morning, I went ahead and started bleeding off the coolant, and surprise, surprise, the old thermostat I tried to reuse and save $1 wouldn't open. So before I started work a little later that day, I had the pleasure of taking this whole thing apart, putting a new thermostat in, and redoing everything. Cooling system has been leak-free since I went ahead and did all this. Heat works great. Even drove the car for 2 days back and forth to work, and believe it or not, it ran fantastic. So if some of you are wondering why is it still on my lift, I'll explain. I went ahead and paid the state of Illinois an exorbitant amount of money to go ahead and put title and plates on this car. And as soon as I did that and I was driving away from the Department of Motor Vehicles, I got smacked in the face with a check engine light. The check engine light was a transmission code, P0843, which is the secondary clutch pressure switch. And I looked up the code and did a little research on it, and there's only a couple reasons it's going to be. Dirty fluid, low fluid, that's a common issue. The switch itself is an issue, or could be wiring to the switch. The fluid was old, ugly, and nasty, so I decided to change it. Let me tell you, Honda's got this thing figured out. Here's the little trap door, and it's got 2 Phillips screws holding it on. And if you look right there, there is the drain plug to the transmission. And honestly, all you got to do is take a 3/8 ratchet and crack it loose. Typically with a trans service, you got to drop a pan, the filter's internal, you got gaskets and torque specs and about 10 or 15 bolts around the trans pan to be able to go ahead and do it. And let's face it, you're gonna make a mess. The other thing is they've got an external filter, and it's an inline external filter just like an old school fuel filter. Since I checked the fluid level and it was low and dirty and ugly and neglected, I decided to go ahead and start with a trans service. Went to Honda, got some of this DW1 original equipment trans fluid. That trans actually takes 2.7 quarts because it's an all-wheel drive version. Look up your spec if you got a front-wheel drive. Also, don't forget, get a crush washer. I got it from Honda. It's only a couple bucks. Not sure if you could use a copper one, but honestly, for the price, just get the original Honda one. I tried to get a filter to go along with it. Unfortunately, nobody had the filter. Honda didn't recommend replacing the filter, and it would have taken days to get. So I got done with my trans service and cleared the light, and it came back on almost immediately. And that secondary clutch bypass switch or pressure switch, is right here on the top of the bell housing. So it's not that hard to go ahead and replace if need be. Found it on Amazon, considerably cheaper than Honda. So guys, do your research, and it looks like it's pretty easy to change. However, as you can see, I had a wiring issue, so I ended up taking the thing apart, cutting it open, soldering a piece of wire onto this guy, using some heat shrink, and tagging it into here. I think next time I go to the Summit pick and pull, I'm going to go ahead and snag a new connector and solder it in the right way. I assume too, because you can see this loom hooks up to the heat tube that's new. Moving it took a marginal connector and ended its life. So some of you may be thinking, Mike, this is all great and thanks for the info, but why is the car still on the lift? And let me tell you, I drove the car all week. It was great. Ran beautiful. I was getting 26 miles to the friggin' gallon out of this thing. Loving it. Took my daughter out to breakfast, went to the park, had a nice little day. And that's the day I was going to start tearing open the Jeep. Well, I found a puddle under this thing. So not only do I have one car that's leaking trans fluid, I got two cars leaking trans fluid. And this just so happened to be the trans filter. So Honda doesn't recommend it. There's a lot of people on the old interweb that say don't bother changing it. I'm not one of those guys. This is your trans filter. A lot of people don't have it locally. Honda didn't even have it. But what had happened is, did I just drop that? I guess I gotta go fishing. This bracket holds the filter in place. And on the old filter, it went ahead and rusted a hole in the side of the filter. And so this thing was pouring fluid out the side. The other thing is I went to find this leak and I noticed the rear diff was leaking. So I got low trans fluid, low rear diff fluid, a leaky rear differential, and a leaky trans on the loaner that I'm supposed to be using while I'm going ahead and fixing the other car with leaky problems. I'm just as confused as you guys are. So if we look straight down here, this is where the filter goes into place. I've got this hose that goes, which I'm assuming is a trans cooler. There's another line there. And realistically, between up top, taking the airbox out, and your driver's side front wheel well, you should be able to get this guy without any problems. I ended up going with a Beck and Arnell filter. They got them at O'Reilly's. Took days to get, but they can get it for you. So I got the camera propped up so I can install this filter. You can see with the bracket, it's got this relief in here, and the filter just fits in the relief. 110 millimeter bolt holds this guy into place back here. This hooks on this side, and you got two hoses and two hose clamps. So pretty simple installation. I will be putting this together up top here. It's a lot easier to do this up top than it is to fight next to a firewall and a bracket, and yeah, might as well just do that. See how easy that was? So, not the easiest to see on camera, and I'm sure my elbow is right in the way of the camera right now, so I apologize to anybody out there watching this, but you can get to this filter pretty easily from up top after you remove the airbox or through the driver's side wheel well. Moving to the back to deal with this leaky rear diff, I went ahead and put a 3/8 ratchet on the fill plug and pulled it out. We're not going to torque that down. We're just going to put it right there like that. You can see that crush washer was pretty rough. Other side has a drain plug, same 3/8, crack it loose. 36 foot-pounds on this drain plug. New crush washer. So I probably should have did a real service on this, but the fluid didn't look too bad from what came out, running all over my glove. And if you look at this crush washer, you can see definitely that is where it was leaking from. God only knows how long this thing was leaking. Probably should have did a full service, but I only bought 1 quart. To refill this guy, I went ahead and got one of these transfer pumps. And all you got to do to refill it, or top it off at least, is put the hose in there, start pumping it, and then once it starts trickling out, you're full. There we go. So now we are full. New crush washer on the drain plug, or on the fill plug, excuse me. Get me my handy dandy torque wrench. Rear diff is done. So boys and girls, there is the filter, and you got your single 10 millimeter right there. This thing hooks on, and there's a little hook behind it. Ratcheting wrenches will be your friend, and you'll get it pretty easy. So now I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall this air box, and yeah, I got a filter without a giant rust hole on the side. So guys, the Honda is hopefully 100% leak-free and all ready to go. Not 100% sure what the plan is with this car, but I will be back to it to do some additional work as far as sprucing it up a little bit, maybe doing some paint correction. I'm not gonna lie, I like this little thing, and I like the 26 miles to the gallon. I did a detail on it. I bought a full set of 17-inch Honda OEM wheels and tires for it that I've been working on refinishing. So I've got plans. Not 100% sure what those plans are. I'm gonna get started on that Jeep today. However, I am gonna do a lot of off-camera work just to be able to get it done a lot quicker and to get back to building that sub enclosure. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Ask me any questions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, guys, thanks for joining.